All right, so now we are going to look at the equation negative 6x squared minus 4x minus 5. And we want to graph it. So the first thing that we have to do is find our axis of symmetry. So we have the equation x equals negative b over 2a. In this function, our a is negative 6, our b is negative 4, and our c is negative 5. So now we are going to plug those values in to find our axis of symmetry. So our axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative negative 4 over 2 times negative 6. So that negative negative becomes a positive. 2 times negative 6 becomes negative 12. So we have 4 over negative 12. We can then simplify that to be negative 1 over 3. So I'm going to estimate where that axis of symmetry will be. You could also change your graph a little bit, but I'm just going to count by ones. So negative 1/3 would be pretty close to that y-axis. So that's our axis of symmetry. Now we want to find our vertex. So we are going to do that by plugging in this negative 1/3 back into our equation to find y. So y equals negative 6 times negative 1/3 squared minus 4 times negative 1/3 minus 5. Negative 1/3 squared is positive 1 over 9, so this becomes negative 6 over 9. Negative 4 times negative 1/3 becomes positive 4 over 3, and then we have that negative 5. So now looking at this, I know that I can simplify this negative 6 over 9 to be over 3, and then I can also make that negative 5 over 3. So I'm going to put everything over 3 so that I can simplify as much as possible. So this is negative 2 over 3 plus 4 over 3 minus 15 over 3. When we add those all together, we end up with negative 13 over 3 as our y. So our vertex is the point negative 1/3, negative 13 over 3. Negative 13 over 3, you're probably thinking, where is that going to be on the graph? So that simplifies down to negative 4 and 1/3. So we go down 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a little bit lower. So that's where our vertex is going to be. So now we can look at this parabola and we can see if it's going to open up or down. And that is based on this a value. So our a is negative 6. So since it's negative, that tells us that our parabola is going to open down. So that means our vertex is the maximum point. So now we have to find some other points before we can keep on going. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have that fraction. So there are two things that you can do here. You can either pick points in which it will still be symmetrical. So these will include fractional points. Or you can pick points that are whole numbers that you think will work out nicer. Either way, you will still end up with the same parabola. I am going to go with the symmetrical one, just because I think that's a little bit harder. So I'm going to do the harder one for you. So the points I'm choosing are negative 1, negative 1 2/3, positive 1/3, and then positive 1. So each of these changes by a factor of 2/3. So that's how much we're changing, so it's going to end up being symmetrical at the end. Now, since we know that this is going to be symmetrical, I can now choose which points I solve for wisely to make it a little bit easier for myself. So we know that negative 1 and 1/3 are going to be the same in terms of y. And we know that negative 1 2/3 and 1 are going to be the same in terms of y. So I'm going to solve the negative 1 and the positive 1, and then I'll get those fractional ones based on the symmetry. So when we plug in negative 1, we have y equals negative 6 times negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 minus 5. Negative 1 squared is positive 1, so negative 6 times positive 1 is negative 6. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. And then we have that negative 5. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Minus 5 gives us negative 7. So negative 1 is negative 7. And 1/3 is also negative 7. So we got 2 points. Now let's plug in when x equals 1. So y equals negative 6 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 minus 5. 1 squared is 1, so negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And then we bring down that negative 5. Negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. Minus 5 gives us negative 15. If you did plug in the negative 1 2/3 and the 1/3, you would get these values. Try to make it easier on yourself though. Pick things that work nicely. Alright, so now let's graph these. So negative 1, negative 7. Negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right about there. 1/3, negative 7. So that's going to be a little bit over on this side. Same distance down. 1, negative 15. It's going to be about there. And then negative 1 2/3 will be almost at negative 2. And then all the way down to the same spot. Now our last step is just to draw in our parabola, and then we're done.